You're right, Oklahoma Sooner fan. Lincoln Riley is an evil, evil man.
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Hulkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC your first listen every day. Whether you're watching on YouTube or wherever you like to download your podcast, we are free, and I appreciate your support. If you are watching on YouTube and you haven't done it yet, it's really easy to become a subscriber. Just hit that subscribe button. And if you like the episode, hit that thumbs up. And because Locked On USC comes at you 5 times a week, and I don't want you to miss an episode, hit that bell notification. And to all of you, by the way, we went over 3,000 subscribers. Thank you very much to all of you. A very, very, very hearty thank you. So there was a lot of quarterback talent on USC's practice field Thursday, the final practice of Spring Camp 2023. Lincoln Riley was there, and no, Cliff Kingsbury hasn't shown up yet, at least in our view, in front of the media, or at least when the players are out there on the field. And so, knowing Lincoln Riley was there, and no, it wasn't just Caleb Williams or Miller Moss and Malachi Nelson, the scholarship quarterbacks. Lincoln Riley basically called up an old friend, Oklahoma fan. You might remember this guy. His name's Jalen Hurts. He's the current Philadelphia Eagles quarterback. He happened to be a special guest and was just hanging out at USC's spring practice today. And it was the last one before the team will have their scrimmage at the Coliseum this Saturday. By the way, is it still called the Trojan Huddle, or is it just the spring game? Someone let me know. I don't think USC is doing a really good job of marketing it as the Trojan Huddle. And if they're not using the name anymore, just let me know. So I digress. Jalen Hurts, he is someone who works just as hard during the offseason as he does during the season preparing for each game. I mean, he has become one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, without a doubt. I mean, you talk about the pecking order of Patrick Mahomes, you have Joe Burrow, you can throw in Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen. I mean, there's a handful, and Jalen Hurts is one of the top. So, if you say there's a top 5, he's somewhere in the mix. And so not only did he get the chance while he was at practice, I would imagine to impart some of his knowledge with USC's quarterbacks. But after practice, the whole team gets a chance to hear him talk about, what it takes to get to that level, to play for, to play for the Super Bowl, for that ring. And what's so funny is I sent out a tweet when I saw Jalen entering the practice field. You might have seen it. It went viral within minutes. Philadelphia Eagle fan basically took the baton and ran with it, which is fine. That's how it works. But so that Alabama lays partial claim, and that Oklahoma definitely lays claim to Jalen Hurts, since Lincoln Riley coached him and helped him become the quarterback he is today. Does that mean that USC gets to lay a little bit of a claim to Jalen Hurts since he's hanging out at USC practice? I'm kidding. Of course, USC doesn't take any claim to Jalen Hurts, but they do get the benefits associated. Like he did play at USC, or played in Los Angeles. And don't think for a second that recruits won't be getting a full taste of that. Whenever they're on an unofficial visit or even on an official visit. Oh, by the way, let's show you some of the stuff. This guy hangs out here every now and then. that stuff really resonates with young people. So again, Lincoln Riley, he gets the credit for helping Jalen become, the superstar that he is today. And as I mentioned, that today's young quarterbacks or who want to play quarterback and want to be coached up by Lincoln Riley, they're going to, they're going to connect the dots. 1 + 1 = me. So, when Lincoln Riley is recruiting a player like Dylan Raiola, the number 1 quarterback in the class of 2024, you don't think for a second Lincoln's going to say, hey, you know what? I can get this guy up on speed dial anytime. And if I need him, he'll be out here at practice. Would that be interesting to you? That's the power of USC. So again, I guess here's the next question. Who is Lincoln Riley going to dial up next on his speed dial? Kyler Murray? I mean, you already got Cliff King. Well, no, I guess you couldn't have both of those guys hanging out together. But maybe if Cliff isn't on campus that day, hey, Kyler, come hang out. Come impart some of your knowledge from the NFL and what I taught you at Oklahoma. So the energy at the practices, it was already high throughout spring camp. So when you have a player like a Jalen Hurts who just shows up, or at least as a surprise to the team, I think obviously the players are going to be pretty jacked up too and want to impress. And you kind of got that sense when the players recognize, oh my God, look who's here. Things kind of just turned up a notch a little bit. And although he's not the same type of NFL pro or mega superstar like Jalen Hurts, Jake Olson is still a Trojan that everybody recognizes whenever he's on campus. In case you're not familiar with the name, Jake Olson, former Trojan long snapper, blind. Yes, first guy to snap a ball in a live game, blind. Pretty special. I was there for that. Well, he was at practice. He had his own little mini entourage, including his best friend, Quebec, his dog, his seeing eye dog. And he was hanging out, chatted up with Gavin Morris for a while. And then eventually, Jake made it over to the special teams group. And, they were chatting and talking. And then next thing you know, they're all posing for a picture as a group. So it was all business. It was still a spring practice, but while the energy and everybody was working hard, everything was there, you also kind of understood that, today's the last practice. And then Saturday, spring camp ends with the spring game. So that's it. 14 spring practices over. Saturday, the camp closes with the spring game. So if you can make it out there, it'll kick off at noon. It's free, just like Locked On USC. And I won't charge you the $25 to park. All I'll ask you to do is to hit that subscribe button and tell a friend. Spread the word. Locked On USC. Make it your first listen every single day, or at least 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. But if you cannot get out to the Coliseum, it's understandable. You can, if you have access to the Pac-12 Network, watch the spring game, the USC spring game that way. Yogi Roth, he'll be on the call. I know that because he was at practice on Thursday, walking around with one of those old Lane Kiffin Denny's menus, play sheets that USC fans used to joke around about. So, check it out. Can't be at the Coliseum. Find it on the Pac-12 Network. And I'll talk about the last practice in a moment. First, though, are you looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want all the sugar or calories? All right. Then you need to try the best tasting protein bar ever called Built. You got to try this. And if you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, I'm a pretty fickle eater. I've got just the thing for you. Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and they taste amazing. Seriously, they taste so amazing. You won't even think that they're good for you. You got to try this. And what makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're all covered in 100% real dark chocolate. And if you know me, I am a chocolate holic, so I immediately gravitate to them. And they come in unbelievably really great flavors like churro and peanut butter brownie, and one of my favorites, cookies and cream. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar. And they do it while they maintain their amazing macros. So you're only going to get 130 calories, you're going to get 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't even need to wait to get a box. That's what's so great about this. For years, we've been telling you how you can go to built.com and you can order them. Well, now, if you're by a Walmart or a Sam's Club, just head on in, and all of your specialty flavors are going to be there for you. That's right. Head into your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, their double chocolate bar, or their coconut puff. And if you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box of their hit flavors, brownie batter puff, and their churro puff. Let me know. Thank me later. All right, so the practice report, last one of spring camp. Here it is. I'm going to race through this thing for you, kind of just give you a little flavor of how it went. I'm always one of the first guys from the media there. I was the first one at the last practice. I made a point to make sure that happened. A little personal pride on my end. Anyways, 3:15, and you can hear the music coming over the walls from outside of Howard Jones Field, and it's Meek Mill for all of you Meek Mill fans, and they were playing what was it? Dreams and Nightmares, I think is the song. Anyways, I like to point out I'm there early because there's always one player he is consistently, and he deserves to be mentioned because you're probably not going to hear his name during a game, but his name is Daniel Luminiere. I hope I pronounced that correct. Number 48. He's a long snapper, special teams player. So while I sort of recognize the Meek Mill song, when they do let the media inside practice after the team's gone through their walkthroughs and that they don't want us to watch, all of a sudden I hear a very familiar song. And if you ever went to a USC home game during the Pete Carroll era, you know exactly what I'm talking about. USC's entrance music during those days, Eminem's Lose Yourself. And I don't know, it's just something, when you hear that song playing and USC football's going on, it just works. I really hope that becomes USC's permanent. Anybody who ever watches Virginia Tech when they enter their stadium, Metallica's Enter the Sandman, this needs to be USC's permanent Enter the Sandman. Just make it Eminem's Lose Yourself. As a fan, it just gets the crowd into it. It's got that slow build-up to where it finally just crescendos and everything just bursts all out at one time. It works. I don't know. Choreograph it. Make it happen. One of the first coaches to always come out for practice, Coach Kyle McDonald. And it's interesting. He's usually one of the first coaches because he works with the special teams. And typically the rest of the special teams guys will follow Daniel out just a few minutes after he gets out there. But today's last practice, it was the running backs group. They were the first group to make their way out. And I gotta say this. It's a really an impressive group to kind of watch and look at. I watched each one come through individually, and they all have, they're all similar in size. Some, are more put together than others, but make no mistake. True freshman, Marion Peterson, number 27. Check him out in the spring game Saturday. He is already bigger than any other running back on USC's roster. He's going to remind you of a young Lendale White when you're looking at him. So when I see that, I'm thinking, man, I cannot wait to see what he looks like next year. I just don't know how much playing time the true freshman running backs are going to get in 2023 because of how deep the room is. Remember, you got Austin Jones, Marshawn Lloyd, Rayleigh Brown, Darwin Barlow, and then you have the two freshmen. Quentin Joyner is the other one, by the way. So, yeah, very impressive running back room. Amarian Peterson, very impressive looking young man. Something to look forward to. Coach Sean Nua, defensive line coach. Usually when he heads out to practice, he's got his walk going. He's got his hair tied up in that man bun. Today, his coif was flowing behind him. It was just a different look, and it worked. If I was advising Coach Nua, let it go. Let the hair flow, man. It looked good. And shortly thereafter, Sean Nua, Solomon Tuliapupu came out. I'm telling you, he is a defensive end, and shaved head, furrowed brow, victory salute. I didn't know whether to smile or to cower in the field position, but hopefully quarterbacks and running backs are cowering in the field position when they see him on the field. I'm expecting big things from Solo this year. What else did I see? Oh, funny moment when the Russians defensive linemen started to make their way out to the field. Anthony Lucas, one of the new guys who transferred in from Texas A&M. If you've ever been to the USC campus and you're familiar with the I guess the logistics, when the players are coming up the ramp from the locker room, before they make a right turn to cross the street and go over to Howard Jones Field, it's the Trojan sword. And the players, coaches, anybody with associated with the team, they tap it on their way over to practice. Well, Anthony Lucas tried tapping it with his gauntlet, his glove, and the sword won. I'm making a little medieval connection there, gauntlet, sword. Anyways, he slapped the sword with his gauntlet, and the sword kept the gauntlet. It's like the glove stuck to the sword as Anthony was trying to run by. I think it was a new glove. It was probably had a little bit too much of the sticky on it. After practice, we spoke with Coach Brian Odom, the linebackers coach, and Shane Lee was one of the players. Someone from the media asked Shane Lee which player would he consider, the most impressive, most freaky athlete, I guess. And he thought about it for a second. Shane Lee was like, Anthony Lucas. He is amazed at how someone his size, Lucas's size, is able to do the things that he does. And Shane's like, I just don't know how a guy that big can do what he does. It's kind of freaky. So, not trying to, get everybody too jacked up, but when you hear these types of things and when you see how the players are talking about it, you can tell when they're being genuine. It's not like they're trying to fluff anybody up. You can tell when somebody's using hyperbole or using coach speak, using finger quotes there. Shane Lee, nobody, when they talk about Anthony Lucas, they're not making stuff up. This has been a consistent narrative from player to coach. He does things that people Anthony Lucas's size shouldn't be able to do. Let's see if we see any of that in the spring game on Saturday. Little fun moment for me. Gavin Morris. He holds one of the titles of an assistant athletic director. He's like a player liaison type of guy. Just a genuinely good guy. Well, he came out to practice. He was wearing one of those We Heart Transfers t-shirts. And when I saw him walking up, I kind of gave him one of these shame finger motions. And that's because he was celebrating the Lakers making the playoffs. I'll get to that in the rant at the end of the show. But he saw me doing that. And he's like, yeah, Mark, I saw it. pissing people off again. I see you. Again, I'll get to that later on. But it was just a fun moment because he knew exactly what I was talking about without me having to say a word. I will say this, and I think everyone will agree with my observation when you see him on Saturday, either on TV or when you're at the Coliseum. Each time I see freshman offensive tackle Elijah Page, I am more and more convinced that he's going to play this season. I'm not making the claim that he's going to start at the beginning of the season, but he definitely passes the eyeball test. And with Cortland Ford deciding to move on and look for a different place to play for a new start, and I wish him the best. He and his family have been nothing but gracious. This is just another opportunity for a young offensive lineman like Elijah Page to step up and say, "Hey, it's my job." Now, when the team broke up from their skip and stretch, the defense stays on Brian Kennedy. The offense moves over to Howard Jones Field. I did see one offensive line grouping, and it was from left to right. Michael Tarquin, Gino Quinones, Justin Dietich, Jarrett Kingston, Jonah Monheim, right tackle. So just something to kind of keep an eye on. Again, spring game is just a couple of days away. Get a chance, check it out, PAC-12 Network, or if you're there. I think you're going to see a lot of different offensive line combinations, but I would not be surprised if you see that one. What's interesting about that grouping, at least in the way I see it, Jarrett Kingston is the smallest of that group. He's not a small guy, but of those five, I would call him the small guy. I'm trying to look for a clever word, but he's the smallest of the group. I'm not sure if he's being recruited by USC, but Carson Tabarachi's little brother, he was there. He was getting a tour from Big Bro. Other notables who were hanging out watching practice, you have 2023 offensive line class, Micah Banuelos, he was there. 2024 safety athlete prospect, Jason Mitchell. So I'm sure they were pretty stoked to see Jalen Hurts hanging out at practice. I mentioned the other day on the Locked On USC episode how Caleb Williams is becoming very comfortable with the camera. Well, I think he was mocking the few of us in the media who were there at practice today who had our cameras out, because when he was running out to practice, he was like, cheese, kind of goofing on us. So whatever. I hope he's having fun. He deserves it. But it kind of felt sarcastic. Whatever. Thursdays is usually the day when we talk to defensive coaches and players after practice. Today, on Thursday for practice, we spoke with Coach Brian Odom, linebackers coach. And he's really excited about his group. And he has every right to be. And he was speaking really highly of Tackett Curtis, the freshman. It's almost like the way he was describing Tackett, it's like he has some really, really good days, and even his bad days aren't necessarily bad days because the next day he doesn't make any mistakes. He just becomes a better version of Tackett Curtis from the day before. And sometimes you have to dial him back. He is a really physical young man, and he's going to play a lot this year. Coach Odom said, as long as Tackett continues to develop and do what he's doing now, it'll be hard to keep him off the field. He spoke about his new middle linebacker, Mason Cobb. Quote, Mason was born to play middle linebacker. He's not just a physical, violent guy, but he's also got a certain type of twitch to him. The way he moves. Coach Odom really likes the way Cobb plays the position. In fact, when I was watching those guys going through their drills real quickly, there was one drill where the linebackers, I guess they were at opposite ends, and they would race around a cone and they would kind of meet in the middle. One was considered the ball carrier. Every single time, Tackett Curtis is 100% physical effort on every repetition. And you almost have to remind him, hey, it's not tackle, it's thud. So, but it's okay. As long as the technique is good, that's all anybody really cares about. I mentioned Shane Lee talking about Anthony Lucas and how impressive he is. I wanted to know, I asked Coach Odom, how are you keeping Eric Gentry involved while he's unable to practice? And, he talked about how he's, when he's on the sideline or watching, how he's just dialed in with everything. It's not going to be an issue when Eric comes back. He talked about how much bigger he's gotten in the offseason, adding weight. It does look like he's added about 15 to 20 pounds. So now it's just a matter of him getting back into football shape and getting back out there with his guys. Shane Lee, again, Shane is a very mature young man, and they asked the same question of Shane. How is Eric, maintaining his part with the group? And Shane's like, man, there was this one practice. I have video of it, and I had to send it to Eric. He's telling us this story where Eric was watching the play happen from the sideline, and the whole time Eric's doing these body, gesticulations and kind of in the moment as the play is developing. And so it was just a funny way that Shane was describing it. And he goes, yeah, I had to send Eric the video so he could see what he looked like. So yes, Eric is into it. It won't be a problem. And then as far as the secondary, Alex Grinch, Dante Williams, who I spoke with the media after practice, Bookie Radley-Hiles, Taylor Mays, those guys have got it on lockdown. And Dante Williams said the thing that's impressed him the most about his guys so far through spring, they're all playmakers. They're making plays. So hopefully we'll see that on Saturday as well. All right, before we get out of here for this week of Locked On USC, what do we do every Friday? That's right, I got a rant. And how come if USC was good enough to be on ESPN last year for the spring game, they're not good enough this year? I mean, what's up? You got the reigning Heisman winner. You just had Jalen Hurts hanging out of practice. I mean, not only do you have the reigning Heisman winner returning, he will also be receiving his Heisman Award at halftime of the spring game. You would think ESPN would want to be there to show that, wouldn't you? Instead, the Pac-12 Network has the TV rights because apparently ESPN would rather be in Boulder, Colorado, hanging out, showing Deion Sanders and his new group. Look, I get it. Last year, Lincoln was the new kid in town, and I guess that's what ESPN is focusing on. Is Deion, you're the new coach of the Pac-12. Let's check out what you've got going on with your guys. So this year, ESPN is going to be putting Colorado primetime with primetime coverage. And USC will finish their final spring camp as a Pac-12 member on the Pac-12 Network. So hopefully you guys will have access to that so you can watch the spring game. Otherwise, you got to get to the Coliseum. And you can blame ESPN for that. I'm kidding, of course. But on a more serious note, not kidding. I mean, which team, if you had to choose between Colorado and USC, which team actually has the better storylines that you want to talk about during a spring game? Because they can get kind of boring. That's right. It's USC. You had, last year, Caleb. This year he's returning. Everyone anticipates him, being the first overall draft pick. So they should be talking that, building that up, what he needs to do to get there throughout the season. They could talk about, Lincoln Riley's recent hiring of Cliff Kingsbury. That's a great talking point. And how, that brain trust is going to be able to put up, points like a pinball machine, which should just thoroughly frustrate any defensive, coordinator that has to try and figure out, all right, what is USC going to be doing this week? Because, and here's the other thing, as far as frustration, USC fans, if USC's defense finds itself this year, and they really don't have to get that, they just have to be better than last year, and that's not a big ask. If USC's defense is better, this USC team, the way we anticipate them scoring points, this USC team could literally go through butter like a hot knife. I mean, that's how good they could be. I think I mentioned on yesterday's episode of Locked On USC that I was on the Locked On Pac-12 show with Spencer McLaughlin. That show debuted that episode is on YouTube now, so you can go check that out. And he referred to USC as a Darth Vader. And I got to tell you what, I relish that role. When I take off my media hat and I put on my USC fan hat, I love the role of Darth Vader. And I love it so much, in fact, I demand every single time USC enters a stadium that the Imperial Death March music be played when USC enters the stadium. Play it over the loudspeakers. Kind of like, when you're watching a baseball game, how every batter has their own walk-up music. That needs to be USC's walk-up music. Darth Vader's theme song. Make it happen. And one last thing I'm going to vent about. I kind of touched on it earlier in the show. Look, for all of you who are trying to hate at me and don't, stop. I've probably been a Laker fan longer than many of you loyal viewers and listeners have been alive. That doesn't make me a better fan. That just makes me an older one. But let's get one thing very clear, okay? Laker fans, do not ever celebrate making the playoffs. That's an LA Clippers DNA trait, okay? That's not what Laker fans do. So don't at me any of that BS because homie don't play that, okay? I was a Lakers season ticket holder back when they were playing at the Great Western Forum. At halftime, in between quarters, I was hanging out with Jerry Buss. This is when I used to smoke cigarettes. His seats were above mine. We would go outside and share cigarettes. Well, I wouldn't share, but we would have a cigarette in between when the game was being played. That's how far back I go. So, yeah. I celebrate Lakers getting a number one seed or winning a championship. I'm not going to be happy about being a 7th seed and making the playoffs. So let's just not go there. So don't ever question why I'm a Laker hater. It's a whole nother story. Anyways, I'm not a Laker hater. I love my Lakers, but I love USC more. And I love my Locked On USC listeners who make Locked On USC their first listen every day. I want to say thank you. We'll be back again next week with another 5 episodes. We're going to review the spring game, and I'm going to have a whole bunch of other stuff to talk about because there's going to be a whole lot more to talk about next week. A lot of stuff coming up. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.